Hey all, and aloha from Maui, Hawaii. I'm on Facebook Live. Here we go. I couldn't see my screen. So, I believe that leaders who receive the deepest emotional transformation, not to mention whole life up levels, which I'll get to, do this one very specific thing. And this one very specific thing that I'm going to unpack to today has three parts. So, a lot of clients have come to me over the years essentially with a desire to change their internal and emotional landscape, and then to sort of feed those changes either into an up level in business or an up level in relationship and intimacy, particularly with men. And the one thing that I believe that is needed to create emotional liberation and to facilitate those changes is actually the same thing across the board. So if you're here live or you're on the replay, you've tried to create emotional changes or internal changes. And when I say emotional change, that could be freedom from past trauma, that could be changing a limiting belief system, that could be freedom or liberation from a symptom like anxiety or nightmares or PTSD or, recurrent negative thoughts. And a lot of you say emotional changes or internal change, that's a huge category. But a lot of you, when you're presented with the realization that something needs to be shifted on the inside in order to shift the outside, immediately start to think about things like mindset work or law of attraction. And I might talk about LOA later, I might not. But I want to mention that mindset work alone is actually not the way to create the emotional changes, the internal changes that you desire. So, I really believe that to create really, really deep, permanent emotional change, something completely different is needed. And when I say deep, permanent emotional change, I mean internal shifts where, intrusive thoughts don't return, where nightmares stop happening, where maybe you had anxiety about a particular thing and that symptom is no longer there. So that's what I mean when I say deep-seated changes, permanent changes. And I really believe that something that has nothing to do with mindset work, that has nothing to do with LOA, that has nothing to do even with conventional therapy, is what's needed for most leaders to create the level of change that you desire. So what is needed, right? So what is this thing that I'm talking about? When you want to create a deep-seated emotional change, and I'm going to call it emotional freedom, and to create emotional freedom, creating that change happens across the mind, the body, and the spirit. And I would even divide the mind into conscious thought processes as well as the unconscious, although you could also argue that the unconscious overlaps with the body. The problem with things like mindset work and even law of attraction are that they work with the conscious mind. So you're using one part of this puzzle and neglecting all of the other parts. I believe that for you to create the deep-seated emotional change you desire, and as a result of that, to trickle out into whole life up levels, which I'll get to, you need to begin not with what your conscious mind is doing, not with what you want, but with getting curious about what you're not looking at. So if I were to ask you right now, what in your life are you not looking at? What issues and topics in your life are you not looking at? What in your emotions are you not looking at and avoiding? And what even in your body are you avoiding, especially emotions in the body? That would be the key. So the emotional change and liberation you desire begins with getting curious about what you are avoiding, not with what you're currently thinking. So let's break this down a bit more. On the top level, you have your conscious mind. You have what you're thinking every day. You have what you're saying every day. You have the realm of where you're doing mindset work from. Oh, I want, 10 new clients. I'm going to tell myself I'm going to get 10 new clients, mindset work, right? Underneath that, you have your unconscious/subconscious. And that's the place where you have all the beliefs that run counter to the conscious beliefs, that run opposite to the conscious beliefs, that challenge the conscious beliefs. The first thing that I believe that you need to do is to get curious about what your unconscious and subconscious thinks about or has to say about what you say you want. So if you're here live or on the replay and you're saying, oh, I want to make more impact on the world. Okay, what does your unconscious mind have to say about that? Underneath that, I believe that what you need to look at next is your body. Because you have your top level of mind process consciousness, right? The place where mindset work, LOA, all that jazz happens. Underneath that, you have your unconscious mind. And then if you go a bit deeper, you have emotions. I'm going to stick with emotions as they're stored in the body. So I believe that the next thing you need to do is to get curious about your body and the emotions that you're storing in your body. And then, of course, to give yourself permission and space to express, release, alchemize, transform those emotions. And of course, the last part of this process has to do with your spirit and connecting to your larger self. I'm not going to get too into that today, but I do believe that that's the last part of this process. So when you think of emotional transformation, if you're here live, if you're on the replay, and you're thinking about emotional transformation, whether that's for yourself or for others you know, or for your workplace or your team, what comes to mind? You might think about mindset, you might think about LOA, you might think about psychotherapy. But what I believe works best is putting four things together, four aspects of your puzzle of who you be at the deepest levels together, instead of just working with one. So I'm going to share some client results from this work, and then I'm going to take you on a brief journey through this process. So I've had women come to me and do this four-part process with me as clients, and transition from stuck, stagnant marriages into both the love of their life and brand new homes. I had another woman come to me who was a psychotherapist and miserable and making really low pay, who was ready to create her own business. And within doing this precise process and the internal emotional transformational work, within a couple of months, she was totally booked out in a brand new business. So let's take a beat, let's take a breath together, and let me talk you through this for a moment. Go ahead and take a breath or two and think of a situation in your life that you would like to transform. Now, this could be an internal or emotional situation, or it could even be an external one. Okay. Now, let's start with the conscious mind. What do you think needs to change? Take a moment, take a beat. What do you think needs to change about this? Maybe you think you need an affirmation if it's internal. Maybe you think you need to take an action if it's external. So let's start with what your mind thinks needs to change about this. And take a moment to notice. Okay, now go a bit deeper. If you go under your thinking mind, Notice if you have any sensation of like limiting beliefs or blockages or fears about this. Drop a level deeper. And start to notice if there's any little sneaky sideways thoughts of, oh, I'm scared it won't happen. Or maybe this isn't for me, or I'm scared if I do this, this other bad thing will happen. And just take a moment, drop a level deeper into your subconscious and take that in. Now take a breath or two, go a moment deeper, and bring your awareness into your body. And if you don't know how to do this, don't worry about it. Just take your best guess. Just take your best shot. Take a moment, bring your awareness to the best that you can in your body. And notice when you think about making this emotional change, this emotional transformation, if any emotions or feelings come up for you in your body. And we're not working through this today. That's what happens in private mentorship with me. We're just taking note and taking stock. So just notice if any emotions or feelings about making this change come up for you. And, take note of those, jot those down. And then finally, last part, ask yourself, what would my larger self do? So I fully believe we all have a higher self, larger self, greater self, whatever you want to call it. And he, she, they, or them have answers that our conscious minds do not necessarily access. So go ahead and go back to the change that you want to make, the deep-seated emotional transformation you want to make, and ask yourself, what would my higher self do? What would my larger self do? And take a moment, notice. And take that in. Okay, thank you for doing that with me. So yeah, like I started this video saying, I believe that those of you and leaders who receive the deepest, most profound, and most permanent emotional transformation really engage in this four-part process, working with the conscious mind and what you're consciously thinking, working with the subconscious/unconscious mind and things like limiting belief systems, honoring emotions in the body and releasing them, and tuning into the larger self, higher self, grand scheme of things, and what the higher self has to say about this. Rather than, which is the second part of this, rather than referring on tools like law of attraction or mindset work being limited because it's only working with the conscious mind in general, sometimes the subconscious, unconscious, but not the body and not the spirit. And law of attraction being incredibly limited because it's trying to bypass all the emotions that you're holding about everything. So that's it, guys. That's what I had to say. If you have any thoughts about this, anything you want to share, anything that comes to mind, drop some comments below. Hit me up on the replay. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have thoughts, drop your thoughts below and tag me. And if you tag me in a comment, I will be sure to reply. Sending you lots and lots of love from Maui, Hawaii, this gorgeous Friday afternoon.